Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Politdigm channel. My name is Red, and if you watch our podcast, you already have known about me. And today I wanted to make a bit of a video. This is something new for me and for Politdigm, so I'm not really 100% sure how this is going to go. So I am just kind of going to go with the flow and do a bit of an unscripted and kind of unplanned video of something interesting. So, in the day of recording this, yesterday was my birthday. If you watched the last episode of the Time podcast, the one episode 24, you will have known about that. And one of the gifts that I got for my birthday was the Communist Manifesto, which is pretty funny if you know me personally, because it is kind of a bit of an inside joke that I, of course, am a leftist. I mean, of course, I started this company and Politdigm, so of course, I have leftist roots. It's very leftist. And so and I was very curious about reading the Communist Manifesto. I knew that it was a relatively short book. I am not the biggest fan of reading books. I've never been a big fan of reading. It's not because I have anything against it. It's purely because I have just a really hard time reading because I will read two sentences and then I'll start wandering off and thinking about other shit. So pretty hard for me to really focus on it. But regardless, I have recently started reading a bit, small books, doing some basic literature. And so I thought that reading a book like The Communist Manifesto, which is relatively small, I have it in my hands right now, would be an interesting way for me to basically just, get into reading and, of course, make some sort of content for Politdigm. And also kind of doing the two kind of forces me to be focused on what I'm doing, help me focus on reading. So there's the Communist Manifesto was written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. We'll learn more about them in the beginning of the book, so I'm not going to tell much about them. However, this specific edition of the Communist Manifesto has an introduction written by Yanis Varoufakis, which is a Greek economist, which was I think the prime minister of economics in Greece for like a couple months or something, a couple years back. I think it was related to he was there, I think, before or during the 2008 recession. So yeah, but he has some very interesting stuff. I've watched a lot of his videos in the past, and I quite enjoyed them. And so my parents got me specifically this copy because they know that I enjoy his content. So with that being said, I guess I'm going to get into it. So I'm not really sure how this book is structured when it comes to chapters. So I guess I'm just going to read a couple of chapters. I'll maybe make this video like 30 or 20 minutes long, and then I'll see how I'll deal with the next few episodes, or I don't know. So the book starts off with a bit of an introduction to the writers. So Karl Marx was born in 1818 in Trier, Persia. While attending university in Berlin, he was influenced by the ideas of the philosopher Hegel and his critiques, the young Hegelians, but Marx eventually rejected both schools of thought. He quickly earned the reputation of a revolutionary and left Germany for Paris, where he met his lifelong friend and collaborator, Friedrich Engels. Together they wrote published the Communist Manifesto, which was published in 1848, just before the first wave of revolutions in France. Marx returned to Germany, but his radical activities led to expulsion, whereupon he moved to London. There, Marx and Engels collaborated on further works on economics and temporary politics. Marx also wrote his major thesis, Das Kapital, but only the first volume was published in his lifetime. Marx died in poverty on March 14th, 1883, and was buried in Highgate Cemetery. He died in poverty, okay? Did not know about that. Now it's about Friedrich Engels. Friedrich Engels, the son of Manchester's factory owner, was born in 1920. So he was younger than Marx. He wrote several groundbreaking essays on contemporary social and political conditions in Britain, including the condition of the working class in England, in which he criticized the working conditions and treatment of the urban poor. After Karl Marx's death, Engels completed and published the last two volumes of Das Kapital from his friend's surviving papers. He died in 1985. That's a wholesome story. Also, I'd like to just, since we're in the beginning of the video, we're only 5 minutes in, that I've made this joke before on the podcast. Don't forget to check out the podcast. That I am a bit dyslexic. Do I have any sort of proof or any sort of diagnosis? No, but I am not great at reading or have a hard time at doing so. So yeah, let's keep that in mind, please. Okay, so now we're actually getting into the manifesto. So I think was this the introduction written by Yanis? I don't know. So, oh no, I skipped the page. Never mind. Okay, introduction. A hard specter to silence. For a manifesto to succeed, it must speak to our hearts like a poem, whilst infecting the mind with images and ideas that are dazzlingly new. It needs to open our eyes to the true causes of the holy shit, bewildering, disturbing, exciting changes occurring around us, exposing the possibilities our current reality is pregnant with. It should make us feel hopelessly in inadequate, for the not having recognized these truths ourselves. And it must lift the curtain on the unsettling realization that we have been acting as petty accomplices, introducing a dead-end past. Lastly, it needs to have the power of a Beethoven symphony, urging us to become agents of a future that ends unnecessary mass suffering and inspires humanity to realize its potential for authentic freedom. No manifesto has better succeeded in doing all this than the one published in February 1848 at 46 Liverpool Street, London. Commissioned by Engels revolutionaries, the Communist Manifesto, or the Manifesto of the Communist Party, as it was first published, was authored by two young Germans, Karl Marx and 29-year-old philosopher, a 29-year-old philosopher with a taste for Epicurean hedonism. What does that mean? Hold on, I'm gonna Google this. Okay, it's related to philosophy, so I don't know much about philosophy. That's more of Alpha's, my co-host, or the co-host of the podcast type of shit. But I honestly don't know what that means. So do your homework. I will do mine at some point and look into this, or ask Alpha about it because he surely knows more about this, or probably has studied it in school. So going back to what I was saying, Karl Marx, a 29-year-old philosopher with a taste for Epicurean hedonism, and Hegelian rationality, and Frederick Engels, a 28-year-old heir to a Manchester mill. As a work of political literature, the Manifesto remains unsurpassed. Its most infamous lines include the opening one, a specter is haunting Europe, the specter of communism. That goes hard. Have a Shakespearean quality about them. Like Hamlet confronted by the specter of his slain father, the reader is compelled to wonder, should I conform to the prevailing order, suffering the slings and arrows of the outrageous fortune bestowed upon me by history's irresistible force? Or should I join these forces, taking up arms against the status quo, and by opposing it, usher in a brave new world? For Marx and Engels, immediate readership, this was not an academic dilemma. Debate in the salons and cliques, salons and cliques of Europe. The manifesto was a call to action, and heeding this spectre invocation often meant persecution, or in some cases, lengthy imprisonment. Today, a similar dilemma faces millennials, conform to an established order that is crumbling and and incapable of reproducing itself, or oppose it and considerable personal cost at considerable personal cost in search of new ways of working, playing, and living together. Even though communist parties have disappeared almost entirely from the political scene, the specter of communism driven by the manifesto is proving hard to be silenced. Okay, the delicious irony. To see beyond the horizons in any manifesto's ambition, what? To see beyond the horizon is any manifesto's ambition. But to succeed as Marx and Engels did in accurately describing an era that would arrive a century and a half in the future, as well as to analyze the contradictions and choices we face. Okay, now we have a little added on information here. When Marx and Engels were writing the manifesto of the Communist Party, there was no such thing as a Communist Party. The fact that no serious Communist Party exists today closes nicely a historical circle. The first political party to use the term communist in its title were the Bolsheviks. Well, in the 20th century, it seemed that the manifesto of the Communist Party serves in purpose well in the absence of the Communist Party. Interesting. Oh, wait, did that sentence continue? Wait. So I was reading, sorry, but to succeed as Marx and Engels did in accurately describing an era that would arrive a century and a half in the future, as well as to analyze the contradictions and choices we face today, is truly astounding. In the late 1840s, capitalism was foundering, local, fragmented, timid. And yet, Marx and Engels took one long look at it and foresaw our globalized, financialized, ironclad, and all singing, all dancing capitalism. This was a creature that came into being after 1991. At a very same moment, the establishment was proclaiming the death of Marxism and the end of history. Of course, the predictive failure of the manifesto has long been exaggerated. Sounds like a meme. I remember how even left-wing economists in the early 1970s challenged the pivotal manifesto predictions that capital would settle everywhere, establish connections everywhere, drawing upon the sad reality that were then called third world countries. They argue that capital had lost its fizz well before expanding beyond its metropolis. Why am I having metropolis? Sorry, in Europe, America, and Japan. Empirically, they were correct. European, US, and Japanese multinational corporations operating in the peripheries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America were confining themselves to the role of colonial resource extractors and failing to spread capitalism there. Instead of imbuing, I don't know what that means, these countries with capitalist development, drawing all, even the most barbarian nations into civilization, this is in quotes, they argued that foreign capital was reproducing the development of underdevelopment in the third world. This idea first appeared in the development of Undevelopment by Andre Gunther Frank, Monthly Review, September 1966. It was as if the manifesto had placed too much faith in the capital's ability to spread into every nook and cranny. Most economists, including those sympathetic to Marx, doubled the manifesto the manifesto's predictions that exploitation of the world market would give a cosmopolitan character to production and consumption in every country. As it turned out, the manifesto was right, albeit belatedly. It would take the collapse of the Soviet Union and the insertion of 2 billion Chinese and Indian workers into the capitalist labor market for its prediction to be vindicated. Indeed, for capital to globalize fully, the regimes that pledged alliance to the manifesto had first to be torn aside. As history ever produced a more delicious irony. A chronicle of our present. Any reading of the manifesto today will be surprised to discover a picture of a world much like our own, teetering fearfully on the edge of technological innovation. In the manifesto's time, it was the steam engine that posed the greatest challenge to the rhythms and routines of feudal life. The peasantry were swept into the cogs and wheels of its machinery, and a new class of masters, that factory owners and the merchants, usurped the landed oh my god, sorry, my throat is killing me, landed gentry's control over society. Now it is artificial intelligence and automation that loom as it disruptive threats, promising to sweep away all fixed, fast frozen relations, constantly revolutionizing instruments of production. The manifesto proclaims transformation, the whole realization of society, the whole relation of society, sorry, bringing about constant revolutionizing of production, interrupted disturbance of all social conditions, everlasting unnecessary and necessary uncertainty and agitation. For Marx and Engels, however, this disruption is to be celebrated. It acts as a catalyst for the final push humanity needs to do away with our remaining prejudices and underpin the great divided divide between those who own the machines and those who design, operate, and work with them. All that is all that is solid melts into air. All that is holy is profaned. They write of technology's effect the manifesto. What? Sorry. They write of technology's effect in the manifesto. Oh. And the man is at last compelled to face with sober sense his real conditions of life and his relations with his kind by ruthlessly vaporizing our preconceptions of false certainties. Technological changes is forcing us, kicking and screaming, to face up to how pathetic our relations with one another are. Today, we see this reckoning in the rivers of ink and pixels spent debating globalization's discontent, while celebrating how globalization has shifted billions from abject to relative poverty. Venerable. Yes, Western papers, Hollywood personalities, Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, bishops, and even financiers of Warner Buffett's wealth all lament some of its less desirable ramifications: unbearable inequalities, brazen greed, climate change, and the hijacking of our parliamentary democracies by bankers and the ultra rich. None of this should surprise a reader of the manifesto. Society as a whole, it argues, is more and more splitting up into two great hostile camps, into those great classes directly facing each other. As production is merchandise and the profit margin of the machine's owners become our civilization's driving motive, society splits between non-working and non-working, shareholders and non-working wage workers or non-owner wage workers. As for the middle class, it is the dinosaurs in the room set for extinction. At the same time, the ultra rich become guilt ridden and stressed as they watch everyone else's lives sink into the precariousness of insecure wage slavery. Marx and Engels foresaw this supremely overpowerful minority would be eventually proved unfit to rule over such polarized societies because they would not be in position to, next page, position to guarantee the wage slaves a reliable existence. Barricaded in their gated communities, they find themselves consumed by anxiety and incapable of enjoying their riches. Some of them, though smart enough to realize their true long term self interest, recognize the welfare state as the best available insurance policy. But alas, explains the manifesto, as a social class, it will be in their nature to skimp on the insurance premium, and they will work tirelessly to avoid paying the requisite taxes. Is it not what he transpired? The ultra rich are insecure, permanently disgruntled clique, seeking solace from psychics, shrinks, and entrepreneurial gurus. Meanwhile, everyone else struggles to put food on their tables, pay tuition fees, juggle one credit card for another, or fight depression. We act as if our lives are carefree, claiming to like what we do do what we like. Yet in reality, we cry ourselves to sleep, assuming that we manage to overcome anxiety induced insomnia. Do gooders, politicians, and recovering academics, economists all respond to this predicament in the same way, assuming every fiery condemnations of the sim what of the sympath sim sorry, I do not know how to write this word, how to read this word. Income inequality. Okay, we're gonna skip past that word while ignoring the cause, i.e., exploitation resulting from the unequal poverty rights of over machines, land, resources. Is it any wonder we are at the impasse, wallowing in a variety of hopelessness which only serves the populace seeking to court the worst instincts of the masses? With the rapid rise of advanced technologies, we are brought closer to the moment where we must decide how to relate to each other in a relation, civilized manner, in a rational, civilized manner. I'm sorry. We can no longer hide behind the inevitability of work and the oppressive social norms it necessitates. The manifesto gives its 21st century reader an opportunity to see through this mess and to recognize what needs to be done so that the majority can escape from the discontent from the discontent into new society arrangements in which the free development of each is conditioned for the free development of all. Even though it contains no roadmap of how to get there, the manifesto remains a source of hope not to be dismissed. A 13-word theory of history. If the manifesto holds the same power to excite, enthuse, and shame us as it did readers in 1848, it is because the struggle between social classes is as old as time itself. Indeed, for Marx and Engels, the violence and vagaries of all human history can be summed up in 13 rather audacious words. The history of all what of all heterote existing society is the history of class struggle. Heterote. Heterote. I don't know how to read that word. I am dumb. I apologize. From feudal aristocracies and theocracies, to industrialized empires and nation states, the engine of history has always been the conflict between constantly revolutionizing technologies and the prevailing class conservatives. With each disruption of society's technology, the conflict between us changes from, as do the clashing social classes. All classes die out and eventually only to remain standing: the class who owns everything and the class who owns nothing. The bourgeoisies and the proletariat. This is the predicament we find ourselves in today. While we owe capitalism for having reduced all class distinctions to the gulf between owners and non-owners, Marx and Engels want us to realize that capitalism is insufficiently evolved to survive the technologies it spawns. Our capitalist societies are a sort of hybrid in transition, a societal frog which must shed its gills before it can breathe properly and realize its potential. It is our duty to tear at these gills, the primitive notion of a privately owned means of production, and force the hand of change that must involve the socialization of robots, land, and resources. Currently, when new technologies are unleashed in societies bound by this primitive labor contract, wholesale misery follows. The manifesto unforgettable words. Wait, oh, sorry. In the manifesto's unforgettable words, a society that has conjured up such gigantic means of production and of exchange is like the sorcerer who is no longer able to control the powers of the netherworld, whom he has called up by his spells. The sorcerer will always imagine that their apps, search engines, robots, and genetically engineered seeds will bring wealth and happiness to all. But once into societies, released into societies divided between wage laborers and owners, this technology's marvels will push wages and prices to levels that create low profits for most businesses. It is only big tech, big pharma, and the few corporations that command exceptionally large political and economic powers over us that truly benefit. If we continue to subscribe to labor contracts between employers and employees, then private property rights will govern and drive capital to inhumane ends. Only by abolishing private property of the instrument of mass production and replacing it with a new type of common ownership that it works in sync with new technologies will we lens inequality and find collective happiness. According to Marx and Engels' 13-word theory of history, the current standoff between workers and owners has always been guaranteed. Equality inevitable, the manifesto states, is the next page. Hate when books do this. Bourgeoisie's fall and the victory of the proletariat. So far, history has nullified this rousing prediction, giving rise to serious doubts regarding the manifesto's underlying analysis. But the critics forget that the manifesto, like any worthy piece of propaganda, intentionally presents hope in the form of certainty. Just as Lord Nelson relied his troops before railed. Damn, I got a hard time reading that word. Railed his troops before the Battle of Trafalgar by announcing that England expected them to do their duty, even if he had grave doubts that they would. The manifesto bestows upon the proletariat the normative expectation that they will do their duty to themselves, inspiring them to unite and liberate one another from the bounds of wage slavery, and in the process rid society of the ensuing waste. Will they? On current form, it seems unlikely. But then again, we had to wait for globalization to appear in the 1990s before the manifesto's estimation of capital potential could be fully vindicated. Might it not be that the new global, increasingly precarious proletariat needs more time before it can play the historic role that the manifesto foreshadowed? Of course, no one knows for sure how this drama will unfold. But while the jury is still out, Marx and Engels tells us that if we fear the rhetoric of evolution or try to distract ourselves from our duty to one another, we will find ourselves caught in the sorry, in the virtue. I think it has to do with virtue, right, or something like that. Vertiginous spiral in which capital saturates and bleaches the human spirit pale. The only thing we can be certain of, according to the manifesto, is that unless capital is socialized, we are in for a dystopic development. Yeah. Insufficient relativity. On the topic of dystopias, the skeptical reader will perk up. What of the manifesto's own complicity of legitimizing authoritarian regimes and stealing the spirit of the Gulag guards? Surely we haven't learned how the manifesto's message plays out. Instead of responding defensively, pointing out that no one blames Adam Smith for the excesses of the Wall Street or the New Testament for the Spanish Inquisition, we can speculate how the authors of the manifesto might have answered this charge. I believe that with the manifesto in hindsight, Marx and the Engels, Marx and Engels would confess to an important error in their analysis. If inefficient reflexivity. This is to say that they failed to give sufficient thoughts and kept a judicious silence over the impact their own analysis would have on the world they were analyzing. The manifesto told a powerful story in an uncompromising language intended to stir readers from their apathy. What Marx and Engels failed to foresee was that powerful and prescriptive texts have a tendency to produce disciples, believers, a priesthood even, and a priesthood even, and that this faithful might use the power bestowed upon them by the manifesto to their own advantages. Sorry, gotta scooch up on my chair. With it, they might abuse their comrades, build their own power base, gain positions of influence, bed impersonable students, take control of the Politburo, and throw anyone who resists them into the gulag. Similarly, Marx and Engels failed to estimate the impact of their writing on capitalism itself. To extent of the manifesto helped fashion the Soviet Union, its Western European satellites, Castro's Cuba, Tito's Yugoslavia, Tito's, I guess, Yugoslavia, and the several social democratic governments in the West. Would these developments not cause a chain reaction would frustrate the manifesto's predictions and analysis? After the Russian Revolution and the Second World War, the fear of communism forced capitalist regimes to embrace pension schemes, national wealth services, even the idea of making the rich pay for poor and petite bourgeoisies students to attend purpose-built liberal universities. Meanwhile, the rabid hostility of the Soviet Union stirred up paranoia and created a climate of fear which proved particularly fertile for figures like Joseph Stalin and Pol Pot. I believe that Marx and Engels would have regretted not anticipating the manifesto's impact on the communist parties it foreshadowed. They would be kicking themselves that they overlooked the kind of dialectic they loved to analyze. Sorry. Be kicking themselves that they overlooked the kind of dialectic they would love to analyze. How worker states would become increasingly totalitarian in their response to capitalist state aggression, and how in their response to the fear of communism, these capitalist states would grow increasingly civilized. Another area of Marx and Engels relates to Marx's belief that truth about capitalism could be discovered scientifically using mathematic methods. The so-called schemas of reproduction. See my article, A Hard Spectre of Silence. Holy shit, I don't know how to read that name. Sorry if I butcher this. Magnad Dassi's Marx Revenge, Science and Society, 69 4. I'm not sure what I'm reading here, but as a criticism of the manifestos, this does not hold much weight, as in 1848, Marx had not yet become a Marxist economist. Fair enough. Blessed, of course, are the authors those errors are due to the what? Blessed of course are the authors those errors are due to the power of their words. Even more blessed are those whose errors are self-correcting. In our present day, the worker states inspired by the manifesto are almost gone, and the communist parties disbanded are in disarray. The liberated from the competition which regimes inspired by the manifesto globalized capitalism in behaving as if determined to create a world best explained by the manifesto. There is an alteration. What makes the manifesto truly inspiring today is its recognition for us to be here and now in a world where our lives are being constantly shaped by a universal energy which breaks every limit and every bond and posits itself as the only policy the only universality, the only limit, and the only bound. From Uber drivers and finance ministers to banking executives and the wretchedly poor, we can all be excused from feeling overwhelmed by the energy by this energy. Sorry. Capitalism's reach is so pervasive it can sometimes seem impossible to imagine a world without it. It is only a small step from feeling of impotence to fail under the breakable spell of Tina, the dogma there is no alternative. The dogma that there is no alternative. But astonishingly, claims the manifesto, it is precisely when we are about to succumb to Tina that alternatives abound. What we don't need at this juncture are sermons on the injustices of it all, the enunciations of rising inequality, or visuals for our vanishing democratic sovereignty. Nor should we stomach desperate acts or regressive escapism. The cry to return to some pre modern, pre technological state where we can cling to the bosom of nationalism. What the manifesto promotes is moments of doubt and submission is a clear headed, objective assessment of capitalism and its ills seen through the cold, hard light of rationality. The manifesto argues that the problem with capitalism is that it produces too much technology, or that it's unfair. The capitalism's problem is that it's irrational. Capital's success at spreading its reach via accumulation for accumulation's sake is causing human workers to work like machines for a pittance, while the robots are programmed to produce stuff that the workers can no longer afford and the robots do not need. Capital fails to make rational use of the brilliant machines that machines it engineered. What? Injured. Fuck, I'm bad at reading. Sorry. Condemning whole generations to the deprivation, a decrepit environment under the underemployment and zero leisure. Many years ago, as a graduate student in Thatcher's England, I was conducting interviews with unemployed people as part of a research project. One of our wrote questions was, how much leisure time do you have on average every weekday? One of the interviewees, on being asked this question, glared at me and replied, "Mate, if you have no work, you have no leisure." Yeah. Even capitalists are turned into angst ridden automatons. They have lived in permanent fear that unless they commodify their fellow humans, they will cease to be capitalists. Joining the desolate ranks of the expanding precariat proletariat. If capitalism appears unjust, it is because it enslaves everyone, rich and poor, wasting human and natural resources. The same production line that dumps out untold wealth also produces deep unhappiness and discontent on the industrial scale. So, for first task, according to the manifesto, is to recognize the tendency of this all conquering energy to undermine itself. When asked by journalists who or what is the greatest threat to capitalism today, I defy their expectations by answering capital. Of course, this is an idea I have been plagiarizing for decades from the manifesto. Given that it is neither possible nor desirable to annul capitalism's energy, the trick is to help speed up capitalism's development, so that it burns up like a meteor rushing through the atmosphere. While on the other hand, resisting through so rational collective action, its tendency is to steamroll over human spirit. In short, the manifesto's recommendation is that we push capital to its limits while limiting its consequences and preparing for its socialization. We need more robots, better solar panels, instant communication, and sophisticated green transportation networks. But equal, we need to organize politically to defend the weak, empower the many, and prepare the ground for reversing the absurdities of capitalism. In practical terms, this means treating Tina with the contempt it deserves while rejecting all calls for a return to a less modernized existence. There was nothing ethical about life under earlier forms of capitalism. TV shows that massively invest in a calculated nostalgia for a chivalrous past such as a Downtown Abbey should make us glad that we live in our era. At the same time, they might also encourage us to floor the acceleration of changes while we chant the end of humanity's prehistory cannot come soon enough. In Marx and Engels' theory of history, societies replete with class divisions are considered prehistoric. History will begin in this sense with the end of last phase of social of class society after capitalism. Of course, given that post-capitalism is not inevitable, inevitable, this means that humanity may never get to its historical starting point. History's starting point, sorry. Epilogue. The Manifesto is one of those emotive texts that speak to each of us indifferently at different times, reflecting our own circumstances. Some years ago, I called myself heretic, an heretic, libertarian Marxist, and I was roundly this. Whoa, jeez, I'm going to try to read this again. Sorry. Some years ago, I called myself an erratic libertarian Marxist, and I was roundly disparaged by non-Marxists and Marxists alike. As soon after, I found myself thrust into a political position of some prominence during a period of intense conflict between the then Greek government and some of capitalism's most powerful agents. Reading the manifesto for the purpose of writing this introduction has been a little like inviting the ghosts of Marx and Engels to yell a mixture of censors and support in my ears. Adults in the room may my memory of the time I served as Greece's finance minister in 2015 tells the story of how Greece's springs was crushed via a combination of brute force on the part of Greece's creditors. I don't know what that means, and the divided front within my government. It is as honest and accurate as I could make it. Seen from the perspective of the manifesto, however, the true historical agents were confined to cameo appearances or to the role of quasi-passive victims. Where is the proletariat in your story? I can almost hear Marx and Engels scream at me now. Should they not be the ones confronting capitalism's most powerful with you supporting from the sidelines? Too right. If there was one thing I could have changed in how that conflict panned out, this would have been it. Thankfully, rereading the manifesto has offered some solace too, endorsing my view of it as a liberal text. A libertarian one even, where the manifesto lambasts bourgeois liberal virtues, it does the same because of its dedication and even love for them. Liberty, happiness, autonomy, individuality, spirituality, self-guided development are ideals that Marx and Engels valued above everything else. If they are angry with the bourgeoisie, it is because of the bourgeoisie seek to deny the majority an opportunity to be free. Given Marx and Engels' adherence to Hengel's fantastic idea that no one is free as long as one person is in chains, their quarrel with the bourgeoisie is that they sacrifice everybody's freedom and individuality on capital's altar of accumulation. Though Marx and Engels were not anarchists, they loathed the state and its potential to be manipulated by one class to suppress another. At best, they saw it as a necessary evil, but would live on in the good post-capitalist future coordinating a classless society. And so would the need for a welfare state net that, according to the legitimizing cliche, catches the victims of unfettered labor's markets, when in truth it entangles them forever in the unrelenting miseries. If this reading of the Manifesto holds water, the only way of being a communist is to be a libertarian one. Heading the Manifesto's call to unite is, in fact, consistent with becoming card carrying Stalinists, or with seeking to remake the world in an image of now defunct communist regimes. When everything is said and done, then what is the bottom line of the Manifesto? And why should anyone, especially young people today, care about history, politics, and the like? Marx and Engels based their manifesto on a touchingly simple answer. Authentic human happiness and genuine freedom must accompany it. For them, there are the only things that truly matter. The manifesto does not rely on strict Germanic evocations of duty or appeals to historic responsibilities to inspire us to act. It does not moralize or point its finger. Marx and Engels attempted to overcome the fixation of German moral philosophy and capitalist profit motives with a rational yet rousing appeal to the very basic of our shared human nature. Key to their analysis is that ever expanding shames between those who produce and those who own the instruments of production. The problematic, sorry, I kept reading. I'm going to read that again. Key to their analysis is the ever expanding chasm between those who produce and those who own the instruments of production. The problematic nexus of capital and wage labor stops us from enjoying our work and our artifacts, and turns employers and workers, rich and poor, into mindless, quivering pawns who are being quick marched towards a pointless existence by forces beyond our control. But why do we need politics to deal with this? Isn't politics stultifying, especially socialist politics? With Oscar Wilde one claimed that up to what? Sorry, but why do we need politics to deal with this? Isn't politics stultifying, especially socialist politics, which Oscar Wilde once claimed takes up to many evenings? Marx and Engels' answers is because we cannot end this idiocy individually, because no market can ever emerge that will produce an antidote to this stupidity. Collective democratic political action is our only chance for freedom and enjoyment. And for this, the long nights seem as small price to pay. Humanity may succeed in securing social arrangements that allow for free development of each, as the conditions for the free development of all. But when again, we may end up in the common ruin of nuclear war, environmental disaster, or agonizing discontent. In our present moment, there are no guarantees. We can turn to the Manifesto for inspiration, wisdom, and energy, but at the end, what prevails is up to us. Yanis Varoufakis, April 2018. So that was just the introduction to this book. How many pages was that? Why is it in Roman numerals? That is 29 pages, right? Read 29 pages in 48 minutes. That's not a great track record, but hey, it is what it is. But that was interesting. That was a very nice introduction. I really enjoyed reading that. Of course, my goal with this series is not to give my opinion whilst I'm reading. I can always give my opinion at the end of each episode, but I was thinking of rather just making an entire episode of kind of reflecting on what I've just read. And but yeah, just in a bit of a summarized version of what I think of what I just read is that I like the end specifically that talks about the idea of like capitalism being like stupid, like being like idiotic, because it is not rational, right? It's like this irrational fear that's like leading us to doing this dumb thing, and kind of that being the idea driving capitalism kind of makes it hard to comprehend when you would rather have, everybody be happy and everybody kind of having this idealistic, utopian world where they don't have to worry, and why, and where they just be living in, in a constant state of leisure, which at the end of the day is what a lot of us want. So, you know, that is basically what Yanis is trying to say, is that the manifesto tries to kind of use our empathy for people and our own like personal feelings towards wanting to just be able to, live life and be happy and just not feeling so miserable all the fucking time. They want to use that feelings we have and basically be like, hey, here's, what this thing you're feeling, this is what might be causing it. At least that's a bit of an interpretation that I got from what he said. But yeah, I think that with that, I can conclude the first episode. There is much more to be read. There are a couple of there's a couple of chapters. These chapters are large, and apparently after the introduction, the numbers aren't in Roman numerals anymore. So that's nice. Makes it easier for me to read. But yeah, this book has a total of, let me check, total of, not the book, the actual manifesto part has a total of 85 pages. So I guess that's why they have the normal Rome, 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 Roman numerals. Sorry, I had a bit of a stroke there. To kind of, split them into two parts. But yeah, that was a great introduction. I did not expect it to be that large or to enjoy it that much, but that was amazing. That was actually really great. That was really fun to read. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to support us over at Patreon if you enjoy this content. Don't forget to check out our podcast, which comes out every Wednesday. Don't forget to read our blogs, which comes out every Monday. And with that being said, we'll see you, or I'll see you. I'm used to saying we when it's the podcast, sorry. But I'll see you in the next episode of me reading the Communist Manifesto with an introduction by Yanis Varoufakis. See you.